I didn't invite you, because starting today, you're no longer family." That was my mother Diane's answer when I asked why I hadn't been informed about my younger sister's wedding, or received an invitation. 3 days ago, she had told me, "It's an important family party." And so I came to this Beverly Hills restaurant, La Belle Vie. There, for the first time, I saw a plate that read, "Congratulations on your wedding, Hannah," and learned my sister was getting married. They must have simply forgotten to give me the invitation. Believing that, I said, "Congratulations, when is it? Of course I'll be there." But my mother coldly cut me off. My father, John, my older sister, Lucy, and my younger sister, Hannah. Their gazes stabbed into me across the frozen table. Diane flicked a pure white envelope on the table with her finger and continued, "Here, this is our gift to you, from all of us." At that cue, Lucy raised her smartphone. "I'll record your best reaction." The red light of the recording indicator pointed at me, cold and merciless. I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a formal, emotionless notice of disownment. All of their signatures lined the bottom. Time seemed to stretch. Only the stark black ink on the paper burned into my retinas. Lucy's hand holding the phone lowered slightly. There were no tears, no anger, none of the reaction she was hoping for. My mind was startlingly clear. What they had signed wasn't just the termination of a family relationship. It was a unilateral cancellation notice. Against me, their safety net. I folded the disownment notice neatly and placed it beside my plate. It was no longer a weapon. It was my permit for freedom. With the single sheet of paper, I had become a stranger to them. Then I took out my smartphone from my handbag. "Oh? Going to cry to your college friends?" "Pathetic," Lucy sneered. But her voice no longer reached me. I didn't even look at her. I focused entirely on the screen. I unlocked it with my fingerprint, swiped through the home screen, passed several apps, and stopped on the familiar icon of my bank. They didn't know. They didn't know that the useless student they always looked down on had spent countless nights coding, building the AI learning platform LearnFlow from scratch, and had already gained a passionate user base. They didn't know that the revenue from that project had grown far beyond anything they could imagine. I opened the loan management screen. Displayed there was, "Private loan, borrower, Hannah Smith." Yes, 2 years ago I had loaned her $80,000 in personal funds to start her flower shop. Not one word of thanks came from the family. I had drawn up a notarized contract, set irreparable breakdown of trust as grounds for termination, and taken her Mercedes-Benz as collateral. A purely business agreement. "What are you doing, Allison? Are you listening? This is no time to be playing on your phone," my father, John, barked, barely containing his irritation. I ignored him and selected emergency suspension of loan based on contract terms from the displayed options. A pop-up appeared asking for the reason for execution. I typed, exactly, word for word, "An irreparable breakdown of trust between the contracting parties." That phrasing was precisely what the lawyer who drafted the contract had included for emergencies. And the best evidence of that breakdown was sitting right beside my plate. The disownment notice. Once the entry was complete, a red button appeared in the center of the screen. "Confirm?" That single word gleamed with cold, absolute authority. Without hesitation, I pressed the button. Firmly, deeply, a sterile green message appeared. "The procedure has been completed." I placed my phone back in my bag and stood up. Ignoring my stunned family, I turned to Hannah and calmly, clearly said, "I'm looking forward to your wedding." It was a declaration of war. They had no way of knowing its true meaning. After I left the restaurant, the family laughed off my declaration as nothing more than empty bluster. The hollow threat of a powerless daughter they had disowned. Convinced of their absolute victory, they went home satisfied. But starting the very next day in Hannah's perfect world, a small yet unmistakable discordant note began to sound. The first sign came in an email from the Dutch flower importer that was Hannah's main supplier. "Hannah, the payment for next week's special wedding order has been declined by your bank. Please check immediately." Hannah brushed it off as nothing more than a banking system glitch. 2 days later, the store's credit card company called. "Miss Smith, your corporate card is currently unavailable. There may be an issue with your credit limit." "There's no way. It'll be resolved soon," Hannah said irritably and hung up. 3 days before the wedding, a notice arrived from the real estate company that handled the store's lease, stating that next month's rent payment was overdue. The small cracks widened steadily with each passing day. Her shop's cash flow had been completely paralyzed by the $80,000 loan I had suspended. Still, Hannah refused to accept reality. She concluded that all of it was simply my jealous sister's pathetic harassment. Her pride prevented her even from telling our parents the full extent of her troubles. Allison is just causing a bit of annoyance. I have loyal customers. Once the wedding is over, I'll get everything back on track. She repeated those words to her reflection in the mirror, unaware that this misplaced confidence was tightening the noose around her neck. Meanwhile, I was quietly and steadily preparing my next move. Sitting before my monitor, I held several online meetings with my legal advisor, Mr. Watson, gathering further evidence that I would present on the day of the wedding. Yes, they must have forgotten. 5 years ago, when my father's business failed and their luxury house was about to be seized, it was me who paid their mortgage for 9 months. Those remittance records, the bank transaction statements, every bit of it was saved perfectly as digital data. Hannah's confidence and ignorance, and the irrefutable evidence in my hands. They had no idea that the wedding a week later would become the stage for their true judgment. The day of the wedding, the chapel of the coast in Malibu Hills looked like something out of a dream. On the terrace overlooking the ocean, tables covered with white cloth were lined up, adorned with flowers Hannah had likely scraped together from the last of her inventory. The cheerful laughter of guests and the clinking of champagne glasses blended with the gentle melody of the string quartet. My parents smiled triumphantly as guests showered them with praise in their role as the bride's parents. My sister Lucy chatted proudly with her friends. To them, I no longer existed. This was their perfect day, after erasing the stain of their inconvenient daughter. Hannah played the blissful bride flawlessly on the surface, but her smile was stiff, and several times I noticed her slip away from the crowd to check her smartphone obsessively. Messages from creditors were gnawing at her composure. The wedding's highlight, the champagne tower ceremony, was just about to begin when it happened. A subtle stir rose at the entrance. The guests turned. Standing there was me, Allison. Dressed in a simple yet elegant black dress, I stood quietly, alone. Of course, I had no invitation, but no one could stop me. Everyone here knew I was part of this family. The moment my supposed family recognized me, their smiles vanished from their faces. What replaced them was surprise, displeasure, and a hint of fear. Hannah went pale as if she'd seen a ghost, the hand holding the champagne bottle trembling. Ignoring their panic, I offered a calm, gentle smile and walked straight toward them. The guests watched, holding their breath, waiting to see what would unfold. At some point, the string quartet had stopped playing. On their perfect stage, an uninvited main character had just stepped into the spotlight. "Allison, why are you here?" Lucy's voice was tight and trembling, filled more with shock than anger. My father glared at me silently, as if he believed that gaze alone could drive me out. I stood before them and, smiling pleasantly, but loud enough for every guest to hear, said, "Of course, I'm here to celebrate my lovely sister's wedding. Congratulations, Hannah." At those words, Hannah's shoulders jolted violently. From the small gift bag in my hand, I pulled out a sheet of paper. A copy of the disownment notice they had handed me just a week earlier. "And this is the heartfelt gift all of you gave me last week. Today I brought a return gift." A wave of murmurs rippled through the guests. Whispers of "disowned" rose from various corners of the venue. I took the microphone from a nearby stand and slowly walked toward the stage. The host tried to stop me, but my father raised his hand to halt him. He didn't want to escalate the scene any further. He was waiting for me to say something foolish and destroy myself. Standing on the stage, I swept my eyes slowly over the faces of the guests, one by one. Then, still smiling gently, I spoke into the mic. "Everyone, thank you for gathering today to celebrate my sister Hannah's wedding. I'm her older sister, Allison Smith. Today, in honor of this wonderful occasion, I would like to share with you all a little bit about the secret of success behind the Smith family, particularly my sister Hannah." A hush fell over the venue, as if someone had poured water over the entire room. Hannah's face was past pale, an ashen, sickly shade. I took a slow breath. The curtain on the show had just risen. "Many of you are probably customers of Hannah's beautiful artistic flower shop, Fleur de Rêve. This was how I opened my speech. Several women among the guests nodded proudly. They were regulars at Hannah's shop, devotees of her success story. Hannah, hearing her shop praised, allowed the slightest hint of relief to surface on her face. But that relief shattered completely with my next words. Hannah built that shop into a popular business in just 2 years through her talent and hard work. However, perhaps many of you don't know where the beginning of that dream came from. I paused for a breath, then continued clearly, loud enough for the entire venue. The initial capital for that shop, $80,000, was a loan from me, taken from my personal assets. At that moment, a massive ripple swept across the room. Guests stared in disbelief, first at me, then at the deathly pale Hannah, then at our frozen parents. The loyal customers of the shop reacted with shock. I thought Hannah said she built everything herself. The whispers were loud enough the microphone could have picked them up. Ignoring the swelling commotion, I continued, calm and steady. Of course, this was not a gift. There was a notarized contract. It was a purely business loan. And in that contract, it is clearly written: in the event of a serious breakdown of trust between the parties, full repayment shall be required immediately. I took out another sheet of paper, a copy of the contract stamped by the notary office. And then, 1 week ago, my beloved family proved, by delivering this disownment notice, that the trust between us had been completely and irrevocably shattered. Therefore, in accordance with the contract, I terminated the entire $80,000 loan 1 week ago. Hannah's knees buckled. She collapsed onto the floor, gripping the hem of her wedding dress. The reason her shop was falling into a financial crisis. The brutal truth was revealed before all the guests. Even as Hannah crumpled and the venue erupted into chaos, I did not stop speaking. My next targets were John and Diane, glaring at me with hatred from the stage. Of course, this is not the first time I've provided financial support to my family. My tone remained gentle, but cold as I dropped the next bomb. Many of you know my respected father, Dr. John Smith, and my mother, Diane. Many of you have likely visited the lovely Smith residence in Beverly Hills, the symbol of my father's social status and the pride of our family. The guests gulped audibly. Many had surely attended parties at that luxury house. Everyone knew its grandeur. But what none of you know is that 5 years ago, that house was on the verge of foreclosure. My father John's face began turning a blotchy shade of red and black with rage. "Stop it, Allison." His voice sounded more like a desperate scream than a threat, but I did not stop. After my father's real estate investment failed, the Smith family was on the brink of bankruptcy. And during that time, without anyone knowing, someone paid the mortgage on that house for 9 months. I gripped the microphone and slowly pointed at myself. That person was me. The venue fell into a shock, so deep, it turned into silence. No one wanted to miss a single word of this unbelievable revelation. Every eye in the room was locked on me. I believed helping my family was natural. I never asked for anything in return. But instead of showing gratitude, they treated the fact as an embarrassment, an insult to their pride, and tried to erase not only the memory of it, but me as a person. I waved the copy of the disownment notice lightly. This one piece of paper is the clearest evidence. To protect their pride and appearance, they casually cast aside the daughter who saved them. My words sliced through the Smith family's carefully crafted facade, shredding it to pieces. My revelation had completely transformed the atmosphere in the venue. The respect the guests once held for the Smith family had transformed into expressions mixed with scorn and morbid curiosity. John and Diane stood frozen, ghost pale, unable to speak or move. Then it happened. Hannah, still collapsed on the floor, suddenly burst into a wailing scream. Ah! That was the beginning of her perfectly calculated performance as a tragic heroine. Hannah lifted her tear-streaked face and, with a trembling voice, appealed to the guests. Everyone, please listen. What my sister said may not be entirely false. Yes, I did borrow money from her. And yes, there were times when she helped my parents with their mortgage. A soft murmur rippled through the room. Hannah was trying to make herself appear honest by admitting only what she couldn't deny. Through sobs, she continued, "But all of that was because my sister has always been jealous of me. She couldn't stand that I was loved by our parents, that I was achieving my dreams. She used that money to control me, to keep me under her thumb. And when I got engaged, her jealousy reached its peak. That's why she's ruining everything today. This special day, so she can take everything away from me. She wiped her tears with the hem of her dress, letting out a frail, broken sob. I only ever wanted to succeed on my own. But my sister's jealousy is destroying my dream. I'm the victim here. Her dramatic performance began drawing sympathy from part of the audience, especially those who didn't know the real situation. John and Diane must have sensed a chance to turn things around. They put on expressions of worried parents, gently holding Hannah's shoulders, playing the roles they were most skilled at, the victims. Hannah's tears did win over a few guests, but she made one fatal mistake. She forgot that among the guests were her most loyal customers, people who wholeheartedly believed in the beautiful fiction of her success story. Moments after Hannah's performance, a woman stood up. She was one of the most well-known fashion bloggers in Los Angeles. With a cool, steady voice that carried across the room, she addressed Hannah. "Hold on, Hannah. Something you said doesn't add up." Every eye turned toward her. Arms crossed, she stared straight at Hannah. "Just last month in your interview, you said this. My greatest pride is that I started this store with nothing but my own savings, without help from anyone except my parents." I was so touched by that story that I featured your shop on my blog several times. Several other regular customers nodded in agreement. "That's right. You said the same thing to us. We admired how independent you claimed to be." The blogger now shifted her gaze to me. "Allison. And Allison, I know about you as well. Even while studying at UCLA, you developed a groundbreaking educational platform. A few tech news sites have featured you as a young prodigy." That single statement was the decisive blow. The atmosphere shifted. Firmly, irreversibly, to them, I was no longer the Smith family's disappointing daughter. I was the independent creator of LearnFlow. "So tell us, Hannah, which one is the truth?" The blogger pressed coldly. "Did you see us as nothing more than props to embellish your success story?" Her words pierced Hannah straight through. Everything she had built, her image, her influence was collapsing. Her tears were no longer a weapon to gain sympathy. They were the genuine tears of someone whose lies had finally caught up with her. Under the harsh stares of the guests, Hannah stood completely alone. Her tragic heroine mask crumbled away, leaving behind nothing but a pitiful figure built entirely on deception. I watched it all quietly. Then I spoke into the microphone. "This isn't jealousy, Hannah." My voice was calm but iced with finality. "This is business. All of you chose this outcome the moment you all signed that disownment notice." I took out my phone and held the screen up for Hannah and everyone else to see. Displayed was a short message exchange with my lawyer, Watson. A week ago, I terminated the loan. And today, right now, my lawyer has arranged for the final payment demand notice sent with proof of delivery to reach you. It should arrive any minute. At those words, Hannah gasped. "The moment you receive that document, you'll have 10 days to pay. If you fail, then, per the contract, your white Mercedes will be seized, and your shop, along with all assets, will be liquidated through formal procedures." I returned the phone to my pocket, set the microphone back on the stand, and stepped down from the stage. I walked past my stunned family without a glance. As I moved toward the exit, Hannah's shrill scream stabbed at my back. "Wait, please, Allison, we can talk about this." I stopped once. Without turning around, I delivered my final answer. "I received your letter, and this is my reply." After those final words, I never looked back. As I left the wedding venue, I saw a man in a suit entering the hall at the same time, carrying an envelope heavy with legal significance. He was a messenger arranged by my lawyer, Watson. I stepped into my car, the cold Malibu breeze brushing against my cheek. In the mirror, the lavish entrance of the wedding hall shimmered under the lights, now nothing more than a distant world that had absolutely nothing to do with me. I started the engine and pressed the accelerator. The car slid forward and disappeared into the night. It was the moment I became completely free, physically and mentally, from the past that had bound me for so many years. Weeks passed. My life regained a quiet, almost startling calm. When lawyer Watson informed me that the restraining order against my entire family had been officially approved, I felt nothing but an oddly serene stillness. That day, as usual, I was seated in front of my monitors, focused on updating LearnFlow. A short message arrived from Mr. Watson, along with a single news link. "For your reference," he wrote. Curious, I clicked it. The page displayed an article from a Los Angeles gossip site. The headline read, "1 month after the tragic wedding, the spectacular downfall of the Smith family." As I scrolled, the consequences, far beyond anything I'd hoped for, were recorded in unemotional detail. Hannah's marriage had been called off that very day. Her shop bounced a payment the day after receiving the demand notice and collapsed financially. Her Mercedes was seized and auctioned off. Even then, she was left with $55,000 in debt. My father, John, whose scandal at the wedding spread to the university administration, was brought before the disciplinary committee for severely damaging the institution's reputation. Every one of his TV appearances had been canceled. And the thing they treasured most, the Beverly Hills luxury house that symbolized their pride, was on the market. Their sacred symbol of status had become just another listing on a real estate website. Even after reading the article to the end, I felt no joy, no pity, nothing of the sort. Only a quiet sense that everything had finally fallen into its rightful place. With a single click, I closed the tab, like discarding an unnecessary file into the trash. Then I turned back to my own world. 3 large monitors glowed with calm bluish light. The real-time analytics dashboard of LearnFlow. Learning data from students across the world flowed in, forming beautiful, ever-changing graphs and charts. A log showing one student solving a difficult physics problem. A progress graph showing another student finally conquering a math unit they had struggled with. Here, there was no jealousy, no pretense, no betrayal. Only pure intellectual growth and the honest results of one's effort. This was the world I wanted to build. I glanced out the window. The lights of Los Angeles spread like scattered jewels. Once, those same lights had represented the glamorous world from which my family excluded me. But now, those lights feel different, like the quiet breaths of countless people just like me, fighting to shape their future with no one to rely on but themselves. In the corner of the screen, the number of registered users is displayed. It has grown even more since that day, now surpassing 20,000. I take a slow sip of the coffee I have made, the first coffee of my new life, and I smile quietly. Real worth isn't created by blood ties or by others' opinions, and sometimes closing a door gently is the most eloquent answer of all.